Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me today, we've got Chris Hamill and Patrick Van Straten, and we are discussing the biggest topic in world football right now, Messi's potential departure from Barcelona. That's because at Reese Julian said, how do you solve a Messi problem like Barcelona? Pun intended, very good pun, Reese. But, of course, there was only really one thing we could talk about this week. Messi seemingly wanting out of the club that he's been at his entire career, that he's made such a difference at. And obviously this news is sort of changing day by day. We're trying to bring you updates on all our strands this week. But this week we want to focus on how Barcelona would replace Messi. And it will be a pretty massive task to say the least. So 731 games, 634 goals, 285 assists. 1.3 goal contributions per game since his debut in November 2003. That is a quite incredible record across 17 years. He's been Barcelona's top goal scorer in every year since 2009-10, bar one, when Luis Suarez was in 15-16. And he's been the focal point of a side that's won 10 La Ligas, 4 Champions League, 6 Copa del Reys. He's obviously won 6 Ballon d'Ors in the process. And his performances, even now at 33, are still remarkable. 170 goal contributions in 131 League and Champions League games since turning 30, or in the last 3 seasons at least. And his stats last year, in a supposed down year for him, 28 goals and 24 assists in 41 League and Champions League games. It's quite frankly ridiculous. Even this year, in his down year, his expected goals and assists per 90 ratio was 1.17, which is just the second time in the last 5 years it dipped below 1.3. He leads his side for goals, assists, shots on target, key passes into the final third, passes into the penalty area, progressive passes, distance carried with the ball. He really has been very much carrying Barcelona's performances over the last few years, which have deteriorated year on year, really. And it will be a very tough job to replace him. So we've not set ourselves an easy task. The one benefit to losing Messi, if there is one, is that you'll get his £988,000 per week wages off your books, which doesn't include bonuses. So they will have a certain amount of cash to play with. Supposedly he costs about £100 million per year for Barcelona. When everything is structured into that. So there'll be a bit of cash to play with, and we don't know who else is going to leave from the team, so we're just going to focus on Messi this episode. And Chris, it feels like with Suarez potentially leaving that they've almost got to replace 2 roles, with Messi potentially leaving as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a completely thankless task, isn't it? But we're going to broach it anyway, like you said. He's their deadliest finisher and their best creator, so it's going to be difficult to replace him if he does leave with just one player. And given the general age profile of Barcelona's squad, something we've flagged as hugely problematic in the past, I think Barcelona should be recruiting between 22 and 27, preferably under 25. With Luis Suarez leaving as well, they're going to need another out-and-out goal scorer. So with that in mind, we've sort of lined up 2 or 3 options, haven't we? And one of them being Gabriel Jesus of Manchester City, someone that we've touted for Barcelona in the past, because obviously he's behind Aguero at Manchester City, and I do believe he's probably got another gear in him. Big shoes to fill. Only Messi and Suarez took over 3 shots per 90, by the way, at Barcelona, and only 4 players managed to take 2 shots inside the box too. So whoever arrives in the striking department has got to be a mixture of volume. They've got to sort of be able to create their own chances per se if the midfield doesn't sort itself out, and they've got to be deadly inside the box. Now, the Guardian claim that Jesus is a target, and despite being incredibly talented, he is still firmly second choice, and Aguero has just had that surgery, of course. He's coming back from injury. He's going to have plenty of time to rehabilitate. So Jesus' minutes at the start of the season might be limited. He's never started more than 21 league games in a single season. Having said that, he still had plenty of game time with at least 42 appearances in each of his 3 full seasons at Manchester City. 53 this term, in fact, with that injury to Aguero. So he's getting minutes, but they're spread across multiple competitions, with Manchester City competing on all fronts, of course. but never been relied on as the main man. And now he's approaching, 23. He should be a little bit more established. Maybe in the back of his mind, he's thinking, I need to be the main man wherever I go next. And if Messi left, there's obviously a huge vacuum. 2019-20 record, very good. 23 goals in 53 games, backing up 21 goals the season prior. 14 goals and 7 assists in 34 Premier League games, 21 of those being starts. And his underlying numbers are absolutely fantastic. 4.5 shots, 1.4 key passes, 2 dribbles. And the numbers of the forward line at Manchester City tend to be supercharged, don't they? Because of the way Pep's side play. But 1.1 expected goals and assists per 19-20. That's the third time in 4 seasons at City it's been over 1. The numbers would suggest he's not just a talent, but he's a special talent. And despite the fact, he's bemoaned for missing easier chances, isn't he? But what I try to implore to people on Twitter is, I'd much rather have my 21, 22-year-old striker, as he was then, when I remember having this debate, generating those opportunities, finding himself in those spaces, than not. I mean, you look at the sort of career, the trajectories of some of the most prolific strikers in Europe, top 5, and they're going to be underperforming their expected goals because they are finding those pockets of spaces, they are having high volumes of shots and so on and so forth. He is performing below expected goals. Apparently he should have 56 Premier League goals instead of the 41 that he does have in the 102 league games that he's put up for City. But see the argument I just put forward a couple of minutes ago. Options 2 and 3 I've got down here is Anthony Martial. Bit more of a left field shout is Patrick Schick. So Martial, I think the opportunity to get him is probably gone now. They should have struck while Jose Mourinho kind of hung him out to dry. The 24-year-old obviously had an awesome campaign last season, didn't they? 23 goals in 48 games, including 17 league strikes. His numbers a little bit below that of Gabriel Jesus, but you'd expect that on a Manchester United side who only really found their attacking feet, I guess, maybe in the second half of the season. Patrick Schick is someone we've kind of sounded out as someone with untapped potential, but it's now 2 or 3 clubs, isn't it, that haven't been able to ascertain that from him. So he's still recovering from that disappointing spell at Roma, where he only scored 8 goals in 58 games in all competitions. And he got 10 goals in 27 for RB Leipzig last term. I mean, he would be more of a squad player, more so someone that could contribute from the bench at first, perhaps filling that goals deficit left by Suarez. But there would have to be, I think the signing would have to be of the magnitude of Gabriel Jesus and then 1 or 2 others to even think about filling that deficit. Like I said, every suggestion in terms of filling Messi's boots feels stupid, but I think Jesus would be a really progressive marquee signing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's probably the sort of age profile, the sort of development that they need to go for, because we've said for so long that Barcelona need to stop buying players either in their prime or beyond their prime, even in the sort of shape of Antoine Griezmann, because it just causes you problems down the line when you're trying to then sell these players if they then don't work out. I mean, they were linked with Marcus Rashford a couple of years ago, Anthony Martial. These are players that were picked out by their analytics department, which, according to an article I read in The Athletic by Adam Crafton, the analytics department has been largely ignored. They've only had one meeting with the hierarchy all season long. And Barcelona, like Arsenal seemingly, are now going down more of a contacts route or an agent-led recruitment strategy. So all these players that we pick out probably won't end up there, really, if we're being brutally honest. But Pat, let's move on to the more creative side, because Chris has outlined some finishers that potentially could come in and improve Barcelona. But there's so much creativity that would go, out of this side with Messi's departure. I mean, what do you make about who Barcelona could potentially bring in there?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, Messi is still the creative hub of this team, like creating over 2 chances a game. He was the only player at Barcelona to do that last season. But I also think that this idea of like replacing Messi is just like it's a terrible one to get into your head. Like it's not something that you're really going to be able to do. And to be honest, it wouldn't actually be as much of a problem for Barcelona if they were solid in a bunch of other areas in the squad. Like, in a way, in attack, they actually do still have, like, some good materials there. Like, they've got Griezmann, who can play through the middle. They've obviously got Coutinho, who will come back from loan, who can fit into that number 10 role. And I'm not sure that anybody on the market is really going to be better for them than Coutinho in that role. And, you know, you look at Real Madrid. Real Madrid lost their star, and they've still got, obviously, tons of fantastic players. But the reason they can stay competitive is because it's a deep squad, and there are lots of different options in it. Barcelona, if they had a functional midfield and a functional defence, we could actually worry a lot less, because they could feasibly score 30 fewer goals next season and still be competitive at the top of the table. Atletico Madrid have done it. So, I don't know. Like, yeah, I can suggest some 10s. Like, there are guys like Joaquin Correa at Lazio who would be an interesting kind of versatile forward for them. Like, very good underlying numbers. He contributes about 5 shots and shots created per game, which is very good. He's a decent dribbler as well. He's still a reasonable age, kind of 26. And Luis Alberto as well has been linked with them too. A really good progressive passer. Though I also think that you'd hope Koeman will free up Frenkie de Jong to do a lot of that progressive passing. He might not be creating goals, but simply getting the ball into the final third like he did at Ajax will be extremely helpful, especially if he does have Coutinho, maybe a fit Dembele, and Griezmann playing in his preferred position there. To me, I just think you have to put all your eggs in the Jadon Sancho basket. If Jadon Sancho was willing to go to Man United, I think he'll be willing to go to Barcelona. Barcelona are still going to be one of the top 3 clubs in Spain unless they go in and just shove a bunch of money out on like absolutely useless players, which is something they could well do. So I think that Jadon Sancho would solve a lot of their problems at once. Like, I mean, he's obviously got the ability to beat a man on the wing, which they need. He can play on that right-hand side, which kind of nobody in there is really going to be able to do at the moment. He's creative as well. He's extremely young. Like, I mean, these are all things that they are going to need. Plus, he is the sort of player who is potentially going to be a world beater. I mean, he's already, I'd say, one of the best attackers in the world. You imagine in 3 years' time that he's going to be one of maybe the 2 best players in the world. So to me, I think that that's the only thing that they can do to try and approach, you know, that superhuman level of output that Messi had. But in a way, like, I don't know if this is the sensible way to go about it. Like, I think what they need to be doing is taking some younger gambles. So if you do go and buy another striker, maybe also getting a young player, like they've brought in Trincao, that's the kind of sensible thing they need to do. Rather than going and spending huge money on a midfielder like Pjanic, they should maybe get one player who's first team ready for kind of 40 to 50 mil, and then also pick up somebody else in the kind of 20 mil range, which actually Real Madrid have consistently done over the last few years. Like, they brought in Dani Ceballos, like, for his buyout clause. They brought in Kovacic long before they needed him, and they did get some use out of him. They brought in Odegaard years ago, and now it looks like they're going to reap the benefit of that. If you do that, if you're making those moves gradually over time, then you will suddenly find that you have a surplus of talent, rather than kind of having to scrabble around to find not just depth options, but first team options and replacements for your stars all in one summer. Almost nobody can do that. It's impossible to rebuild the centre of a team on the fly and give it enough depth to compete in every competition. So they were linked to Mohamed Ihataren last summer from PSV. I think that would make a lot of sense. I think he's 18 years old, like, contributed 7 goals in 22 Eredivisie games, but his underlying stats are great, like 3 shots, 2.5 key passes, over 3 dribbles. Like, yes, that is in the Eredivisie, but he's exceptionally young. So if they say, right, Coutinho is going to be our starting 10 this summer, rather than just saying that and therefore leaving that position alone, I think the sensible thing would be for them to say, what does our plan look like for that position in 5 years' time? We're going to do things with the assumption in mind that our older players are going to continue to get older and at some point decline. So I think that really less important than just like the odd player they buy at Barcelona is the fact that they have an idea of what the team will look like this year, next year, in 5 years. in 6 years. Like that to me will show that they have a plan. And to be honest, the problem all along has not been that they've, I don't know, that the tactics have been incorrect, though the tactics have been pretty bad. That Messi's had too much power, though Messi has too much power. And ultimately, even that Messi's leaving. Like, those are not actually like the root problems at the club. The root problems are in planning and execution, and they've just never got those right.
Yeah, they seem like they've fallen way behind on the pitch, but also off the pitch. Bartomeu, you know, unilaterally unpopular with all the fans. Their sporting directors have come and gone. There's just been no consistency of thought or planning. And it's actually quite sad to see with anyone with any affection towards the club. It really has been a pretty steep decline. But I'm with you in terms of they need to sort out the midfield and defence as well. Obviously, right back seems like it's a huge issue. They've never managed to adequately replace Dani Alves. Midfield as well. I think they need to really start basing it around Frankie de Jong, Riqui Puig, and then bring in another sort of more box-to-box sort of presser almost for that right midfield slot. Someone like Arturo Vidal, but 10 years younger, would be great. You know, easier said than done. And I'm with you about Coutinho as well. It feels like they have to really utilise him now. They've put down such a massive fee. No one wants to buy him, despite having a very useful campaign at Bayern this year, because his wages are far too high, and that fee that they want is just extortionate. So they've got to use him. And, you know, he could be a very useful contributor for him. So 34 League and Champions League games this year, 11 goals, 9 assists. Barcelona would be crying out for that sort of impact for a player that can play in a variety of positions as well. 0.84 expected goals and assists, nearly 4 shots, nearly 2 key passes. Yes, in a very slick Bayern machine. But, you know, if Barcelona want to improve and move forward in the next few years, I think Coutinho could be central to that. And, you know, Barcelona can't really afford to lose Coutinho alongside Messi and Suarez in one summer as well. So they've got to start basing their attack around Griezmann, Coutinho, Dembele, with some backup from Ansu Fati, Trincao, Pedri as well, who's very highly thought of, although coming in from Las Palmas, I think he's only 17, so maybe one for the future, as Pat was sort of outlining. But yeah, Riqui Puig looked like, in the sort of limited games that I saw him, I think he only made just over 500 minutes, but he actually brought some intensity to the play. He wasn't necessarily the best positionally. He was sometimes caught off guard in counter-attacks, but he brought some energy, some forward thinking to that Barcelona midfield, and his stats were really impressive actually. So despite only playing 11 games, I think 9 of which came after lockdown, nearly 3 tackles and interceptions, 1.4 shots, nearly 2 key passes, over 2 dribbles. His pass accuracy was exceptional, as you'd expect from a La Masia graduate. But yeah, they need to start thinking in other areas as well, and it just makes the Pjanic signing look even stranger as well, given his age and sort of pretty poor season that he put up at Juve as well. Chris, it seems like Ronald Koeman has been brought in more as for his status as a Barcelona legend. He surely can't have really been first choice, and supposedly he rejected it in January anyway. What could you see Ronald Koeman doing with this squad, or is he simply just holding it down for another year until, you know, Xavi comes in?
Well, I mean, that is the popular opinion, isn't it? And it is odd that they've kind of brought in a pragmatist, given that's what they already had in Valverde. Him continuing at Barcelona was deemed untenable at one point, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Like, throughout his managerial career, he's tended to deploy a sort of 4-2-3-1, played a very wide or direct game. Like, he's had mixed results. There's been points in his time at the helm of clubs where they've had, you know, an initial upturn or an uptick in the first year. So maybe they're just looking for, Bartomeu's just looking for a positive reaction, you know, some feel-good factor before he can kind of leave out the back door sort of on his own terms, which doesn't seem like it's going to be possible now. I have nothing really to add that you haven't discussed in terms of what personnel they could deploy and how they could line up. Yeah, I just think he's got a thankless task on his hands, and we've discussed it before. What Barcelona need is someone who's got the club's best intentions at heart. They're not looking to increase their own stock. Obviously, these people are incredibly rare, and they're going to make some tough decisions in order for the next manager, who's perhaps going to be a bit more long term, in order to make his life easy. But You're looking for an altruist there, aren't you? And they are hard to come by. So, someone who's going to remove a bit of power from the players and not tolerate the interference of the board. But is Koeman that guy? It's just impossible to gauge.
Absolutely. He seems like he's been pretty cutthroat to begin with, though, telling Suarez, one of their all-time record goal scorers, that he's no longer wanted, telling Messi, supposedly, that you won't have the same sort of freedom that he's enjoyed previously off the pitch, in terms of the amount of influence he has. Okay, the final question that I want to kind of finish this section on is, do you actually see this transfer happening? Pat, if you had to say, will Messi leave this summer?
Everybody who knows seems to think that he will. I don't know. I just always assume that everything's going to be boring. So there's a part of me just that thinks he'll stay, which would be really tedious. God, I don't know, Dukes. I have no idea. I don't actually care that much. I'd like for him to get the most out of the last couple of years of his career, but I actually don't give about Barcelona. I just think that they don't deserve my interest at this point because they're so badly run.
Fair enough. Chris, are you on similar lines? Do you actually see this happening?
Part of me still thinks it's a power play to purge the board, but the legalities around that, I'm not qualified to talk about. Mostly, I still think he'll be at Barcelona next season, and that this is kind of a move to put himself forward as a martyr, and as such, the fans aren't really going to hold him to account if he doesn't play for the club, and if he continues to be at the club and not play, he's still going to get paid. I'd like to see him at Manchester City. I'd like him to avoid seeing out the twilight of his career at PSG in French football on such a dominant side. Him and Guardiola teaming up to win Guardiola's Champions League at Manchester City before he leaves for the Brazilian national team is what I want to see, Dougie.
Yeah, that'd be pretty epic. From my point of view, I actually don't think if they get over 150, close to 200 million pounds for Messi at 33, I think that's actually quite sensible for Barcelona with his wages. Obviously, he's still the best player in the world. I'm not saying it would necessarily lead to a great improvement in performance next year or the following year, but it would allow them to start rebuilding, which they've needed to do for a while. Busquets, Piqué, Rakitic, Vidal, Suarez, Alba, Messi, etc. They need to move on from that era, and it's going to happen eventually. So if you can get £200 million for Messi, rather than see him retire at the club when he's only probably got three years max, I would say, at this level, then perhaps it's not the worst idea. But guys, let us know what you guys think Barcelona should do if Messi does leave, and whether he will leave, in the comments down below. And let's move on to our quickfire questions. Our quickfire question, we weren't going to do a big match preview this week as it's only Ligue 1 in action and there's no PSG. So our quickfire question comes in from @Panthraddaman, and it's, what are your views on the implosion happening at Valencia? Pat, it appears that Peter Lim is having one right now in Valencia.
It's kind of different from what it's been before. Previously, they've just sacked people, or there's been tension between managers and players, or they've just simply made bad decisions in the transfer market or in the coaching market. This time, I genuinely don't know what they're doing. It's like they're liquidating the club. Everybody is up for sale. There was a rumour that everybody was up for sale except Jose Gaya, but I think that they're trying to sell Jose Gaya to Barcelona at the moment, so I'm not really sure about that. Coquelin went out, not a big deal, got about 8 mil for him, fine. But Dani Parejo went on a free. They allowed him to just kind of cancel his contract and move on a free. I think he had 2 years left on his deal. He's gone. They're trying to sell Gonzalo Guedes. Obviously, Ferran Torres is already gone. Carlos Soler will probably be attracting suitors as well. Maxi
Rodrigo's
Gomez
going, I think.
Yeah, Rodrigo's going to Leeds. Maxi Gomez might be going to Barcelona too. Gabriel's going to Villarreal supposedly. Basically everybody in the squad is linked with a move away, and so I just truly don't know what they're going to do, because if they sell all those players, they'll get some money, but they're not actually getting that much money. It's not like they're really trying to raise funds, as is clear with the Dani Parejo thing. They didn't get very much money for Ferran Torres because he only had a year left on his contract. So I just don't know what their plan is. Are they going to sell all those guys and then try and completely rebuild a squad on the fly? I don't know what their intention is. And if you were going to do that, then you'd at least hope that they had a quality manager in there who had a really clear vision for the sorts of players he wanted to bring in and for the style that he wanted to play. Like, if they still had Marcelino and they were like, you know what, we're going to get rid of like the entire squad and rebuild, then you'd think they've got an excellent manager who's overperformed with bad talent in the past, and they can recruit according to the system that he wants to play. At the moment, I genuinely don't know what they're doing. So, yeah, if you're a kind of mid-table club around Europe's top 5 leagues, it's an absolutely amazing time to go shopping at Valencia, because if you were, say, a Southampton or whatever, and the Maxi Gomez to Barcelona thing turns out to be bullshit, which it has done before, go and have a look. Go and have a look at Gonzalo Guedes if you're Wolves. Like, why not? Like, these are useful players. They've had a bad season in the last year because Valencia were terrible in the last year, but they're certainly not useless. Even in a terrible season, they still finished in the top half of the table. I've got to believe that there's upside in the talent they've got there. So, yeah, I would definitely be looking at a bunch of those players. But as for what Valencia's plan is, I mean, it's the kind of thing where I would assume maybe they were going to try and sell the club or something, you know, because it's like they're fattening up their their balance sheet in preparation for selling the club. Like, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, all very strange, and yeah, weird thinking there. I mean, they sacked Marcelino, I think 3 games into the year, then replaced him with Albert Salades, who'd never really managed before. Now Javi Gracia's gone in. It's chaos. But Chris, I think the departure that's, made most Valencia fans the most upset is that of Dani Parejo. I mean, what a player he's been for Valencia.
Yeah, and there was times where he was kind of single-handedly, dragging them to a respectable finish. We've run his numbers a lot on this show, haven't we? And he was leading for various metrics. Whether he played as like an 8 or a 6, and to let a guy go who's given the club, that stellar a service over an elongated period of time leaves a bad taste in the mouth, doesn't it? It's not just business; it's clearly personal as well. Although Ferran Torres, when he arrived at Manchester City, gave quite a scathing interview about Dani Parejo's leadership qualities, which I didn't expect to see from Ferran Torres, from a youngster at Valencia, because of course, he helped usher in the Copa del Rey, and that was like their first trophy in umpteen years. But yes, clearly there's a divide in the changing room as well between the older generation and maybe the younger talent coming through. So yeah, I mean, I think you guys are pretty comprehensive with that. Nothing much to add other than Jose Gaya was deemed unsellable, but has a €50 million release clause, which Barcelona are apparently willing to meet. I don't know where they're pulling that 50 million from, but I think that is the only way he would depart the club. And they at the moment would probably be happy to sell an asset for upwards of that amount, because they're paying for sort of some of their lack of frugality in recent years, aren't they?
Absolutely. I think it was just pretty classless really to make Dani Parejo hold his own press conference on Zoom and announce his departure from the club and break down in tears when his young son then asked, "Why are you leaving?" I mean, it was just heartbreaking. But yeah, Valencia, absolute chaos. We watch, eagerly throughout the next few months to see what goes down there. And poor Javi Gracia, sacked from Watford, walked into an absolute storm in Valencia. So best of luck to him. But guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. I hope you enjoyed our rundown of who Barcelona should look to replace Messi with if he does depart. It's a pretty impossible task, as we've said many times, and our sort of look at Valencia as well. Thanks to Chris and Pat. And Chris, what should they go and do now?
You should go and watch We Need to Talk over on Football Daily if you haven't done so already. Not out on it in its usual Friday slot. It came out yesterday. Joe is sort of detailing the Barcelona situation. And yeah, check out one of our top 10s that's coming out today or tomorrow on FD as well.
Absolutely. And Pat, what was the podcast this week?
Well, the podcast is going to be kind of out of date by now because it was a look back at the Champions League final. But the podcast that will be coming out this week is How to Fix, where we do a little rundown of a few European clubs, Southampton, Roma and Atletico Madrid, finding some players for them with Henry Hill.
Lovely. Go subscribe to Football Daily Podcast and watch all our content across all our 3 channels. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.